It's time. Time to get inspired and empowered. To realize it's never too late to create your next amazing story. Get ready to break through, transform, and start living the life of your dreams. So, are you ready? Truly ready to begin your journey to create your next amazing story in life and love? Great. Let's jump in with your host, Life and Love Transformational Coach, Suzanne Oshima.
Welcome everybody to the It's Never Too Late show. I'm Suzanne Oshima and I'm a life and love transformational coach at Your Next Amazing Story. I'm super excited today because we have a very special guest, Rebeca Eigen, and she's a 7th House Astrologer, and she's also the author of The Shadow Dance and the Astrological 7th House Workbook. And I'm so excited because today we're going to be talking about it's never too late to own our own shadow. So before we jump into it though, Rebeca, I would love for you to tell our audience a little bit about you, how you became a 7th house astrologer, because I know a lot of people don't know what that is. So can you share?
I sure can. The 7th house in astrology is the marriage house. And so the way this all started for me is I was going through a divorce. And a friend of mine asked me if I'd ever had an astrology reading. And I said no, but I've always been curious. Because I have a lot of Libra, so I could identify with everything that is in like Linda Goodman's sun signs about Libra. And so I go to see this man, and he knew details about me that only I knew, which was amazing to me, but the most startling thing of all was that he knew that I was going back and forth in an obsessive-compulsive relationship. And he said, "You've been involved in this complicated love affair where there were no easy answers." And I'm like, how on earth could he know that? So it astounded me. And at the time, I was getting a divorce. I had a 1-year-old. So I had a lot of nights to be alone. So I spent night after night after night reading into the night about astrology. And then I started taking classes at actually the bookstore in Houston that John Gray's mother owned. John Gray, author of Women Are from Women Are from Venus and Men Are from Mars, whatever. And so I studied there for 5 years. But during this time, I ordered a psychological horoscope analysis report. And it's based on your birth data, the time, place, and date of your birth. And it's authored by world famous Jungian analyst named Liz Green. She's like the world's most famous astrologer, and she's a Jungian analyst. And so I read this report, and I mean, I underlined the whole thing. It was so amazing. But she also talked about the shadow. I didn't know what that was. And I read it, and I'm like, I'm not like that. So I tossed that aside and just ignored it. Well, 2 years later, I was introduced to some cassette tapes of a Jungian analyst in training who was also an Episcopalian priest by a good friend of mine. And she introduced me to these tapes, and I was listening to this man, and he was really making me think. I mean, I was very into metaphysics at the time and still am, but I was involved in the power of positive thinking and how everything happens for a reason. And I was very identified with my idealistic side. Well, I'm listening to this man, and he was bringing up all these questions for me. So I decided, I think I want to go with you. I want to go with you to see this person in person, this man in person. So I went with her to the Sunday school class, and then we went to the Mass, and I sat there staring at this man, and I couldn't stand him. I mean, it was like he was giving me the creeps, and the hair was rising on my arms, and it was like she could feel it. And she said, "Do you want to leave?" And I said, "Yes." So I went home that day, and I obsessed about him. And I've since found out that that's a real sure way to see your shadow is you'll start obsessing about the person. And so I started obsessing about him, and I thought, maybe I should go give him a positive thinking tape or something. Because what I saw in him was that he was cynical and depressed. And I'm like, he said the word shadow. All of a sudden it hit me around 4 p.m. I go to the closet, I pull out my report, and it said that because I have so much air and fire, which is enthusiasm, optimism, very intelligent, very, interested in learning and growing, I had no earth. So it was like cynicism and depression were in my unconscious, and I didn't know it. So the shadow is everything about us that is unconscious, repressed, denied, and undeveloped. So these are dark as well as light parts of us. And I read that report and I thought, oh my God, I started crying. Emotions just started to come up. And that is another thing that the shadow will do. It'll bring up a lot of emotion for you when you see it or recognize it in someone else. So I decided I'm going to go meet him. And I made an appointment with him. He was still a priest at the time. And I made an appointment with him. And I found out that he was teaching a 12-week course in analytical psychology at the Young Center, the C.G. Young Center here in Houston at that time, and it was about to begin the following week. So I go to this class, and I actually ended up taking that course from him 3 times and have studied with the man almost 30 years, and he's brilliant. And I found out about this part of us that we would rather not be. We'd rather somebody else be it for us because we don't want to be that. So we will project it. And that's a key way as to how you find out about your shadow. You'll project it onto the other person and you do not identify with it. I mean, look at how I went through that with him. It was like he was like that. I was not. So that's one of the things we'll tell ourselves when we're projecting.
Right. Because do you think it's because we're just in denial and we don't want to face it? Yeah.
Well, not only that, the shadow is parts of us that we don't tolerate. Our ego does not tolerate. So our ego develops over a period of, the first half of life, our ego is in development. And the parts of us that our parents didn't like, our society didn't like, that we were ridiculed about, all these parts go into the shadow early on. And it takes a lifetime to bring them out. Mm-hmm. And then, I started studying astrology and I found that the 7th house in particular is where we put our shadow. Because the way the chart looks, I wish I had a diagram to show you. Let me see if I have one in here. The way the chart looks, it's a 360-degree circle, right? Mm-hmm. So in that 360-degree circle, there is an opposition. Our first house is what we would consider to be, I can't find it. Here's the circle. Here's the first house cusp. Exactly 180 degrees opposite is our marriage house. So think about that. You're looking out there at somebody else. It looks like somebody that you're fascinated by. Mm-hmm. You're drawn to. You're so attracted to. And the exact opposite. You can be repulsed. You can be completely repulsed and condemning of that person and their way of being in the world. So dark and light. And what Jung called individuation was to become our whole self. So we need that part. And in order to see that part, first we have to project it. It's not of our own volition. We don't do it. The unconscious does it. So that's how it started for me. And, my relationships started to improve drastically because I left him, I got into a partnership, and this can be your partnerships as well. Mm-hmm. I get into a partnership, and by the way, that man had 5 planets in Aquarius, and Aquarius is on my 7th house cusp. So I leave him, and I get a business partner. She's like my best. I'm also a graphic designer, so she was my best client at Exxon for 13 years. And they fired her. And so she called me and said, we work really well together. I'd love to work with you if that's possible. And I said, absolutely. And we worked great while she was at Exxon. We worked really well together. But within 6 months, she was just like my ex-husband. Within 6 months. And I was the common denominator. So what was remarkable was that we were polarizing. She was one extreme and I was the other extreme, and it was an introvert-extrovert thing. And when she would get angry with me, she would stuff it. She didn't like something that was going on. She wouldn't say anything, but she would do things to get even. And I started to notice it, and we were both studying astrology at the time. And so I sat her down at the table and I said, Trish, we're polarizing. This is what you're doing and this is what I'm doing. If we're going to do anything different here, I want your input. If I'm doing something you don't like, you need to tell me. And if you can't tell me, would you please write it down? And she started to do it. She said, I agree, and you're right, and I will start to be more communicative. She realized she was stuffing a lot of her feelings. Well, the interesting thing was her mother and my father were born the same day, the same year. So our parents are in us. And the second chapter in my book is our parents, our partners, and our seventh house, because we marry our parents. Mm-hmm. And that relationship, it took us probably a year to get our act together and to work with each other and communicate and come to the middle. And that was the answer to it all. I needed to become more like her. She needed to become more like me. She needed to stand up for herself. She needed to voice her views. And what she would do is instead of telling me what she was thinking, she would change everything. And then we'd be at a meeting, and we've already agreed on a quote, and we'd get to the meeting and she'd hand me the quote and it would be completely different. Like, why did you do that? So I started questioning these things, and those little idiosyncrasies and things that she would do, she was angry with me. Well, we all have idiosyncrasies, and we have to accept each other with our faults and our flaws and our idiosyncrasies and our shadow. And so I have this thing about cloth napkins, and we would have clients over to my house for dinner, and I would put cloth napkins. And she would come out there the next time and set the table, and she would put paper napkins. So I would go and I would remove them, and I would go put cloth napkins. Well, one day she put paper towels. And I thought to myself, you're angry. What are you angry about now? And so the customers left, and I said to her, Trish, you're angry with me again. What are you angry about? Why would you put paper towels? I love cloth napkins, especially if we're having company for lunch. And she said, this is all about you. You're so picky. You're just such a perfectionist, blah, blah, blah. And she starts, defending herself. Sometimes when you say something to somebody, they don't want to tell you what's really going on with them. Uh-huh. So she left. She was mad. She left. I'm sitting there that night writing in my journal. She's mad at me. I don't know what it's about this time, but she'll let me know. We'll work through this. I was 100% committed. And that's a really important part of your seventh house. You have to be committed. Uh-huh. To work through the shadow. There's no way to get through the shadow if you don't commit to the other person. So I'm writing this in my journal, and synchronistically, the phone rings and it's her. And she said, you're right, I'm mad at you. I'm like, good. Now we can do something about it. So little by little by little, we started to communicate. And we started to meet each other halfway. Sometimes we would do things her way. Sometimes we would do things my way. We had to learn to compromise. We had to learn to collaborate. We had to learn to share our creativity. And our relationship became beautiful within a year. It took us a year. It wasn't easy. I'm not going to say it's going to happen overnight.
Right. So,
but it was worth it.
So what I'm hearing you say is that our shadow can show up in all relationships, not just romantic relationships.
Yes. And it will show up in all your relationships, because one after another, men that I would get involved with or that I would be attracted to were Aquarians. Mm-hmm. And so the universe was begging me to integrate that part of me, because that's a part of us. Whatever's in the seventh house, whatever planets and archetypes are there, because a planet is just an archetype. It's a symbolic representation of a part of our psyche. For instance, Mars is how we go to war. Mars is how we assert ourselves. Mars is our dynamic part, right? The moon is our emotions. It's our feeling nature. It's our receptivity. So each archetype is in everybody. And that's what an archetype means. It's universal. We all have it.
Right.
Whatever planets and signs are in your seventh house, you're destined. You're destined to share that with another person, but in an equal and balanced way. Otherwise, it's going to live against you.
Right.
If you don't own that about yourself, it has to live against you.
So how did that experience with that woman help you in your romantic relationships after you discovered what your shadow was?
Well, the next relationship that I had, which was pretty long term, was a Leo. And I have Leo rising, so we had a lot in common. We love music. You know, there were so many things we had in common. And we actually started studying Jungian psychology at the same time. He had the moon in Aquarius, and it was exactly on my seventh house cusp. And he's like my best cheerleader and my best friend. And he learned all of this with me because he was so intelligent, and he never formally studied anything, but he could sit there and tell you what Saturn means. He can sit there and tell you. So I've always been attracted to brilliance in men, and also men who are radically independent. They're radically independent. They have to do their own thing. They don't like being bossed around. They don't want you telling them what to do. And I'm the same way. So when you attract somebody who is more your energy and you're sharing it, you're actually discussing it. We had to admit to each other our ambivalence about commitment. Our commitment was to the sexual part of our relationship, but we both were ambivalent about being completely committed as far as marriage. And that's another thing that's super important. It's in my book. The outer planets, Uranus, Pluto, and Neptune, they have to do with universal consciousness. They have to do with universal energies. For instance, Uranus is higher mind, and it's bolts of lightning of intuitions that come in. Neptune, which I have a lot of, is higher love. It's about the love for everyone. And Pluto is higher power. So when somebody has Pluto there, you have to learn to share power with another person. And if you have 2 or 3 of these in the seventh, your relationships are spiritual. They're almost like you're going through spiritual transformations constantly through being with a person. You're actually being asked to evolve at a much deeper level or higher level than a Barbie and Ken marriage house with the 2 kids and the PTA meetings and all that. You're being asked to evolve in a different way. And so what I found was that I had a lot of compassion for his idiosyncrasies, for his uniqueness, and for being his best friend. You know, we are best friends. We've been best friends for 15 years. And right currently now, and sometimes he lives with me, and sometimes he moves, and he's right now in North Carolina because his mother needed him. So he's gone to take care of his mother, and he's been there 3 years. But our relationship, our friendship, our relationship continues because that's part of it's not like a relationship. It's different. So when you're studying this information, you find out there's nothing wrong with you. There is nothing wrong with you if your relationships look different from other people. What you want to know is what part of me is a requirement. What do I actually require? And we are all unique. We're completely different from each other. And that's where, having your astrology reading done is amazing. It's amazing. And you can even just order that report and read it, and you'll recognize in yourself, wow, this is me.
So let me ask you a question. Does that mean that the only way to figure out what your own shadow is to get that type of report done, or can you figure it out on your own?
No, life is gonna bring you people in a repetitive fashion, and it'll continue because at midlife, it becomes even more important, and things start to repeat a little faster, and they become more and more and more intense.
Right.
You don't even have to know your astrology. You just have to know that something's repeating and that you're the common denominator, and that we're not in the age of Pisces anymore. We have to give up victim consciousness. We have to recognize the universe has purpose and meaning. and that these people have meaning for us, even if it's painful. Especially if it's painful, then the universe is trying to get our attention. And if it's a disrespect and an irreverence, if we're not listening to the feedback of the repetitive pattern that's coming into our life.
Right.
Does that make sense? It's like,
it totally makes sense, because
we are connected to the cosmos.
Right. Because what I find is that everybody has repeating relationship patterns, blocks and triggers that can hold them back. And so I totally agree with you that it's important to figure out what those are, because it actually empowers you in helping you move forward.
It does, and it empowers you to bring back those parts that you're projecting.
Yes.
When you're projecting onto another person, you have that, but it's infantile because it's in your unconscious instead of conscious.
Right.
So I'm going to show you one thing. This is my logo. See, the shadow is in front? Mm-hmm. We need to bring our shadows in front so that we can see them. And then the most important thing about the marriage house, the 7th house, it's a house of communication. It's about communication with our significant other and being vulnerable. We all get in relationships and we expect that there's not going to be any trauma, there's not going to be any, battles, it's going to be peace and harmony, but it's not. We're going to work through issues and solve problems together. And, what I tell people now is meet that person halfway. Meet halfway. And if they won't meet you the other half of the way, then walk away as if your life depended on it, because it does. As you are committed to you, as you make that commitment to your wholeness, and you recognize the parts of you that got projected and you own them, you're going to attract a different kind of person. We're only going to go through suffering and pain constantly when we are completely unaware and we're a victim. Everybody out there, something's wrong with everybody out there, but there's nothing wrong with us. Well, people they really confuse self-knowledge with their conscious ego.
Right.
But so much in the unconscious. So the second half of life is about bringing unconscious contents to consciousness. And that is a super important part of Jungian psychology. It's called individuation, becoming our whole self.
Right. So, Rebecca, if someone felt like, it's too late for me to do this and figure this out, what would you say to them? I know you have 3 different tips that you can give the ladies to help them turn their life around. Can you share? The first clue is that that you're projecting is when there is a fascination with somebody, or exactly the opposite, a repulsion. But when there's a fascination and you're drawn like a bug to the light, and you get involved with that person, and then you start to polarize, because it's inevitable. It's almost inevitable that polarizations are going to occur. So what I say is meet them halfway. Look at what the polarization is. Whatever they're doing, you need to do some of that. Even if you think it's negative. Say you think it's negative for somebody to be tight with money. That's a key thing. Money with relationships. So what if you think they're cheap? They're tight with money. They're ridiculous. I don't want a person like that. Well, when we say it like that, that's our shadow saying, that's our shadow bringing us information, because it's giving us a charge, right? It's giving you a huge charge. So what I do is, what is it that's giving me a huge charge? What is that about me? How would I be able to benefit from incorporating some of that? Where am I out of control with my shopping or with my money spending? Maybe the universe keeps bringing me that person so that I can be a little more frugal. There's always another way to look at that quality if we will get objective and get out of the emotion. So that is a big thing. And then the second thing I want to say to you is trust. Trust the universe. Give yourself hope and trust when you go out there that you're going to be there for you. So as long as you're being there for you, then you're going to have it mirrored back.
As long as you're communicating authentically, and that means being vulnerable, then you're going to get it back. The universe always, always has our back. I don't care what it looks like. So you have to have that worldview that it's never too late. And our shadow is drawing us into relationship. Even if we don't want a romantic partner, we'll pick somebody at the office to project our shadow onto. And they'll be so eerily like our mother. Right? So this is, it's about bringing all these pieces back home. Our parents, our partners, and our seventh house. We need all those parts. They're part of us. The apple never falls very far from the tree. If you have a child of your own, you know that. So if you didn't like your parents, think about which one you didn't like the most, and then consider that you may need to be more like that parent.
Everyone in the audience is having this aha moment.
Because we do that. We decide our parent, I can't stand my mother. She's too needy.
Right.
Well, needy. Think about the word needy. I had a girl come to me. I've taught workshops for a long time. And she was a real strong Aries, and she owned her own business, and she's a psychotherapist. And believe it or not, she dated my ex-husband. Right? And so she came to my shadow workshop, and she said, why do I keep attracting these needy, whiny people? I don't want these whiny, needy people in my office. And I'm like, maybe there's another way to look at that. Maybe that person is willing to bend. Maybe you need to ask for help. Maybe you're seeing them as needy because you're so do-it-all yourself, and you need help, but you're not willing to be vulnerable or needy. And she went, oh my God. She got it. And when I'm doing a consultation with anybody, they get stuff right there in the consultation, because it's all about opposites. Think about it. Black, white, hot, cold, up, down, and in relationships, sad, happy, simple, happy, go lucky. All these polarizations are part of our universe. That's part of being conscious.
Right. So, Rebecca, what's your last tip?
So my last tip is to really identify with the part of you that is good enough, that is deserving, that does want happiness, that deserves happiness, that requires that person meet you halfway, or that they share your maybe your values or your things in common. I think a lot of people get attracted to people that are total opposites, and they have nothing in common. And they marry that person because of whatever, and then they're like, I don't even know you. Who are you? Well, identify with the part of you that knows who you are as a woman. Who are you is what you want to know. And that will be reflected back to you when you deserve that. And that's what I want in my life. And it doesn't have to be like everybody else's, where I'm completely unique like everybody is. And I don't expect anybody to be exactly like me. I want somebody who will complement me, but also we have things in common, and that we will share our life, our friendships, our coworkers, our employees. All of the people that you draw into your life are going to show you your shadow. So the more you're willing to own it, the more you're willing to see those parts of you, then you can use those in a balanced way, right? It's about balance.
Yeah, I love that, because all I could see when you own it is that as a woman, you're empowered, right? And you're taking back control of your life instead of, like you said, playing victim or blaming others. We become responsible for ourselves, right?
Yes, in the second half of life, my teacher, Pittman McGehee, he was the Jungian analyst priest, he became my mentor.
That's amazing.
I'll give you all a statement he said. Two of them actually were my favorites. I alone must become myself, but I cannot become myself alone. Aww. We need the mirror. We need the mirror so we can see the parts of us we don't know. And then the second one is, what kept us alive in the first half of life will keep us from living in the second half of life.
Aw, I love that. So, Rebecca, thank you so much for being a part of our show. So, can you share with the ladies how they can find you and your amazing book?
Yes, my website is shadowdance.com. Mm-hmm. And I am an authorized distributor for Liz Green in the United States. So if you're interested in one of those psychological reports, they're there, and they're amazing. Trust me, they're amazing. And my book is there online, and there are lots of YouTubes and things that are free articles that you can read about the shadow to help you understand, wow, this is something that I really actually needed.
Awesome. Well, ladies, if you would like to get Rebecca's gift and her book, I think her book is amazing, and she's obviously really powerful in the seventh house of astrology, and I think it's amazing because I think a lot of women didn't even know this existed. So, ladies, thank you so much for joining us on the It's Never Too Late show. Our show is available both in video format and podcast format. If you would like to view the videos, you can go to yournextamazingstory.com. And if you'd like to get the podcast, you can download it from iTunes. And if you would like to get our free ebook, How to Create Your Next Amazing Love Story in 3 Simple Steps, you can go to our website, yournextamazingstory.com, or you can click right here on the video.
Love today's episode of the It's Never Too Late show? Then head on over to yournextamazingstory.com to continue the conversation, get access to show notes, and get more amazing content.